Hi guys, welcome back to another video. So after week 2 of the NFL, we have 2 games on record. We've seen every team for 2 games, play 2 games. So today I'm just gonna organize all 32 teams into these tiers on the left here. So just a few disclaimers to start off this video. These are not the standings. These are not my personal preference on these teams. This is simply based on a variety of different factors: who I trust, what I've seen in the past, what I've seen these past 2 weeks, what I anticipate going forward, um, injuries, health, coaching, just a variety of factors that have kind of helped me organize these teams into different tiers. I think um, there's a lot being said about quarterback play being down and a greater emphasis on running the ball, but I think after 2 games we kind of can see a vision for what these teams are and what it's looking like going forward. So we're going to start at the bottom down here with the Quinn Ewers sweepstakes, and I just used Quinn Ewers from the quarterback from Texas, ranked number 1 in the country. And I just used him, but there's a variety of quarterbacks in the discussion for the 2025 draft, like Shedeur Sanders and Carson Beck, and even guys like Miller Moss are catching on recently. But Quinn Ewers is right there with them. So I think these teams right here that are about to be in this tier, 3 of them, they're absolutely looking at those quarterbacks, and I can't envision a scenario in which they do not draft a quarterback in April of 2025 when the draft comes around. So it's going to come down to these 3 teams: the Carolina Panthers, the Tennessee Titans, and the New York Giants. Um, it kind of speaks for itself, but Bryce Young, the number 1 overall pick from 2 years ago, or last year, 2 drafts ago, if you will, benched before week 3. It's just really really chaotic, really turbulent, and it's kind of disappointing to see the way he's been developed and the situation he's in Carolina. But they have to be looking at quarterbacks. So do Will Levis and the Titans. He's just so erratic at the position. He just makes so many mistakes. And after that outburst by his coach Callahan on the sideline, I don't see how he's back next year. I think the experiment is probably going to last um, until we see more of his mistakes. So Will Levis is just a time bomb. Is he going to throw an ugly pick? Is he going to lateral the ball over his head or something like that? So, and then Daniel Jones, we've seen enough at this point. Brian Dable is a good coach, but even he recognizes the limitations of his quarterback. So, yeah, those 3 teams are definitely looking towards the 2025 draft. And then we move up a tier to no man's land, and I'm going to put the Cleveland Browns and the Denver Broncos in this tier. Cleveland did come off a win. Deshaun Watson did look better, but he has arguably one of the worst contracts in the sport. I'm not going to say that's going to completely handicap them because they've drafted well and their defense is really, really stacked, but it's hard to recover when you're paying A plus for a quarterback and you're getting like C plus at best, and that's what Deshaun gives them week in and week out. So I think they're kind of handicapped in that sense. I feel for Stefanski. I feel for that defense with like Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward, really, really talented players. But um, yeah, they're gonna just look to continue to scrape by with some wins and probably win by like 1 possession, a field goal if they do. But um, yeah, I think they're kind of stuck. And this might feel a little bit unfair on Bo Nix, just 2 starts into his career, but he's thrown it to the other team a little bit too much and a little too much dinking and dunking. I expect him to get more comfortable, but based on just the looks and what I've seen through 2 weeks, he has faced the like a really good defense in Pittsburgh. But even then, I'm gonna say no man's land is fair for Denver and Sean Payton. He's kind of their timelines don't exactly match. I never envisioned Sean Payton as a guy who wanted to start from scratch at the quarterback position and develop his own guy. Yes, Bo Nix is expected to be more NFL ready because of his age and the amount of snaps he got in college, but even then, there's still a learning curve for him. So Now we move up to the bad breaks. And these are two teams, the Miami Dolphins and the LA Rams, with really high expectations going into this year. I think playoffs were the floor for these two teams. They were expecting to make some deep runs, divisional round, conference championship games, but Miami is 1-1. The Rams are 0-2, but they've both been hit with some really brutal injuries at some key spots. Obviously, Tua with the concussions on IR, going to miss at least 4 games. But and then the Rams with Nakua, Puka Nakua, and Cooper Kupp, and their left tackle, and it's just really unfortunate to see this early on in the year before they can even see what they're working with entirely. Sean McVay is a brilliant coach. Mike McDaniel is a very cerebral and offensive innovator. So I'm not going to completely discard these teams, but it's not looking good. And kind of similar to the tier above them, the clock is ticking on them. So speaking of the clock is ticking here, I'm going to put 4 teams that, you know, 0-2 Cincinnati Bengals, 0-2 Jacksonville Jaguars, 0-2 Indianapolis Colts, and the 0-2 Baltimore Ravens. Kind of similar to the bad breaks tier, but Baltimore thinks they're the second best team in the league behind the Chiefs. They think they can compete with the Chiefs, but at this point, it doesn't look like they're going to be hosting many playoff games. It looks like a must-win game in Week 3 against Dallas in Dallas. Um, Indianapolis thought they were going to be challenging Houston for the AFC South title, as did Jacksonville, trying to return to the playoffs after missing last year. But they also had um, reason to believe that they were going to be good this year after starting off 8-3 last year. Haven't put it together. Let a game slip out of their hands in Week 1, and then the same thing with Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati's the team best positioned out of these 4. They kind of have a scheduling break with like Washington coming up on the schedule, the Giants as well. So I expect them to pick up a couple wins here and there, but losing to New England hurts because that was a game I bet everyone was chalking up as a win. I know historically they've been bad in weeks 1 and 2 under Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow, but at some point, if you want to get back to the Super Bowl, it really helps if you host playoff games, and this is also going to be something that's going to affect that. They're probably not going to have the best record in the AFC, probably not going to have a top 2 record, so maybe their home games end in the wild card round or something like that. So these are the things that add up over the season and can can really impact your chances to get to the Super Bowl. So frisky and fun, the tier right above them. These are 3 teams that have at least 1 win on the season. The New England Patriots, 1-1. Las Vegas Raiders, pardon me, and the Washington Commanders. I think neither of these 3 teams really expected to to be at the top of the tiers or at the top of the league, but New England picked up a surprise Week 1 win against Cincinnati, came back down to earth a little bit. They gave Seattle all they could handle in Week 2 at home, but um, the Raiders picked up probably the most impressive or biggest upset win in Week 2. So credit to them, credit to Antonio Pierce. It looks like he has his guys believing, and then you have Max Crosby, who's just probably the biggest game wrecker on defense on the defensive side of the ball. He's just exceptional on the edge. Jaden Daniels is fun. He's fun. He moves around, runs around, throws the ball around, kind of playing like a little bit of backyard football. I expect him to get more refined and be more comfortable in the system moving forward. But yeah, they won a game they were supposed to win. They beat the Giants in Week 2. Wasn't pretty. I don't think it was that impressive actually, but getting a win is what matters for them. So um, the Patriots are fun. Gerard Mayo, first year, Max Crosby, Gardner Minshew, Devontae Adams, they're fun. They can make some things happen. I don't think there's a clear ceiling on all 3 of these teams. They're not going to be contending in December and January, absolutely not. But they do a couple things well, and they're a good watch for a while. And then one of my favorite tiers, trust issues. Starting off with the Philadelphia Eagles, the Chicago Bears, the Dallas Cowboys, and my New York Jets. These four teams do something really well, at least one thing really well. I think Chicago is a really, really great defensive team. They have guys like Jalen Johnson and Montez Sweat, and they're a really good defensive team. They just held Houston to 19 points at home. Dallas has Dak and CD. That's an unbelievable connection between the two, the chemistry, the reps they've had in the past. Not many teams can replicate it, so they do that really well. And Micah Parsons rushes the passer really well. Philadelphia has the tush push, and Saquon Barkley behind that offensive line, really great running game. And then the New York Jets, what do they do? What do they do really well? I think late in games they're going to be really stable. And Aaron Rodgers throws the prettiest football in the league. Late in games, he's going to put the ball where his receivers can get it and only they can get it. So they're going to have that advantage late in games. But at the same time, there's a lot of things I don't trust about these teams, including coaching. I don't trust Matt Eberflus and his ability and his staff's ability to develop a quarterback like Caleb Williams, who struggled through 2 weeks. I don't see much of a great game plan that's favorable for him, for Caleb, and allowing him to get comfortable in the pocket if he's continuously getting moved off his spots by a bad O-line play. I don't exactly love the Cowboys' skill positions outside of CeeDee Lamb. I think their running game is really thin. And then you're relying on guys like Brandon Cooks and Jake Ferguson to make big-time contributions, and I think that's risky. The Eagles' secondary is atrocious. They have a lot of holes, and they're depending on a lot of rookies to step up, guys they just drafted, so that's also a big ask of them. And then I don't like the Jets coaching either. I think Nathaniel Hackett is obviously a good friend of Aaron's, but yeah, I don't think there's a lot of ingenuity on that offense. I don't think there's a lot of creativity, not a lot of motions and shifts like there is in a lot of these high-powered offenses nowadays. So with all that said, I think all of these teams will win at least 8 games, if not 9 and 10. Maybe they all have a good chance to sneak into the playoffs, but I think there's something holding them back from being one of those elite contenders and probably getting to the Final Four, their conference title games. I don't think they get there for one reason or another. And then another one of my favorite tiers, special week twos. So these 4 teams enjoyed themselves in week 2. These 4 teams played exceptional games on at least one side of the football, if not both. Seattle went cross country to New England and won a game in overtime. Geno Smith threw the ball all over the yard. DK Metcalf 8, JSN 8, all that stuff. Arizona had probably the best offensive performance other than New Orleans this season. Kyler Murray, Marvin Harrison Jr. connected on multiple long passes. Kyler looked great, making plays all over the yard. And then Kirk Cousins probably saved the Atlanta Falcons season with that 2-minute drill on Monday night, trailing by 6 in Philadelphia. They go down 70 yards and take the lead, and they end up winning that game. So, they couldn't afford to go down 0-2, especially with Kansas City coming to town in week 3. So that was as big of a win as it gets early on in the season for Kirk Cousins and the Atlanta Falcons. And then here we have the Green Bay Packers losing their starting quarterback in week 1, Jordan Love. And what do? Matt LaFleur cooks. Malik Willis makes plays. They rely on their running game, their new running back, Josh Jacobs, at home. Solid defense, young quarterback on the other side, and they just did what a well-coached team does. They won a big game. They found a way to buy themselves some time meanwhile they wait for Jordan Love to come back. If they can get 1 or 2 more wins, not really rush Jordan, they're going to be in a good position to get hot with Jordan down the stretch, continue to stack wins, and put themselves in a good position to get into the playoffs again. So huge win for them at home, and yeah, absolutely bought themselves some more time. Okay, so now we have the Fool's Gold tier. And here I'm putting the Chargers, the Steelers, and the Vikings. These teams are a combined 6-0, 2-0 apiece. I think for the Chargers, it comes down to being, um, to playing Gardner Minshew and the Raiders, and then playing Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers. I think those are both some of the worst situations in the league, all across the board: personnel, coaching, quarterback play. So favorable start to their schedule, and they capitalize going 2-0. So credit Harbaugh. The Steelers won week one without scoring a touchdown, and then they get to play Bo Nix, who's still learning how to play NFL football. Um, Justin Fields has been far from impressive. He hasn't turned the ball over, which has helped, so credit to them in that sense. And then Minnesota, really impressive win, I think, in week two. But I'm not sure if Sam Darnold can be counted on as a guy that's going to give you really good quarterback play for 17 weeks and the playoffs. So that's why I think none of these three teams are as good as their record says. I know it's early; any team can kind of piece together 2 wins in a row, but yeah, I think that there's a gap between these three teams and the real true contenders, despite what the record says at 2-0. So let's leave them at fool's gold for now. And then we have three more teams in a tier titled September Champs. Champions of September. Um, the Buffalo Bills are pretty much a mainstay at this point in the September Champs. I think they always get off to a really, really good start. And then we have a couple of NFC South opponents here: the New Orleans Saints and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So September champions, three more teams that are combined 6-0. Buffalo got a big win on the road against a divisional opponent in Miami. Josh hasn't thrown a pick yet, which is encouraging. Derek Carr is playing like an MVP candidate, and so is Baker Mayfield. Derek Carr did open up against Carolina, but credit to him for beating Dallas on the road, which a lot of people thought was a good defense. Baker beat Washington at home in week one, which I think is a pretty bad defense. They kind of made Daniel Jones look competent here in week two. And then he kind of played more like himself against Detroit, but found a way to win a game. So um, I think the two best teams here are Buffalo and Tampa. I trust Tampa's defense a lot more than I trust New Orleans' defense, so that's why I think Tampa might win the division. But I think these three teams are better than the teams below them, the Fool's Gold teams, but they're still a little bit flawed. And I think as we play more games and we see these teams play more, I think those flaws are going to be a little bit more exposed. But credit to them for starting off 2-0 and really helping out their playoff chances moving forward. So we're left with just two more tiers. And I think these teams are absolutely firmly in the Super Bowl bubble, and they will be moving forward. So four teams, two tiers. I'm going to put the Houston Texans here in limited holes, as well as the San Francisco 49ers and the Detroit Lions. I think the maybe controversial play here is putting the Lions in limited holes, even though they just lost at home to Tampa. They did beat Tampa in the playoffs last year. I think Jared Goff made some uncharacteristic mistakes late in that game, threw a couple bad picks, at least one bad pick. So, um, yeah, I think it's a one-off in my opinion. Losing that game to Tampa is a one-off. I love all three of these rosters. Starting off with Houston, they have an exceptional young quarterback on a rookie contract, allowing them or giving them the flexibility to add pieces around him, both on offense, the Joe Mixons and the Stephon Diggs. But then they added the Danielle Hunters, and they have Will Anderson on defense as well, so they can get after the quarterback. Derek Stingley is a really good corner as well. Loaded roster in Houston, starting off 2-0, winning the games you're supposed to. Credit to them. I think they're going to coast to winning their division, probably going to, and I think they're going to be in the mix for the one seed in the AFC. San Francisco, they haven't had many holes since probably 10 years ago, honestly, the way they've drafted. In the John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan era, they've always been really good across the board. Defensively, we know about the Nick Bosas and the Fred Warners and the Charvarius Wards and stuff like that. They did lose against Minnesota. I wouldn't be too concerned. I think the fact that they can move the ball so easily, even though they don't have Christian McCaffrey, with Jordan Mason running the ball and Brock Purdy distributing Juwan Jennings. Losing Debo Samuel hurts, but I think Brandon Ayuk is going to get better the more he plays. I think he's just out of rhythm, a little bit rusty. I really do trust San Francisco. With the Rams 0-2 start, I think it's their division to lose again. So I don't see too many holes on San Francisco. The only thing that can probably stop them is health, injuries. So keep an eye out on that. And then Detroit, I love their offensive line. Their two-headed running attack with Jameer Gibbs and Montgomery is really, really potent as well. So I think they play better with the lead. Absolutely, they play better with the lead. Um, Aiden Hutchinson is ascending. It looks like he can become one of the best edge rushers in the league. Had like, I don't know, what was it, 5 sacks on Sunday or something like that. He just was preying and hunting Baker Mayfield. He's exceptional, and I think their defense is um, it's good enough, but I really like these rosters. I think they're very complete, and they're going to be in the mix till the end. So that just leaves the Kansas City Chiefs, the final team, unrivaled. And I say this not because they've played the most beautiful football, not because they don't have flaws, but I say this because despite of their flaws, despite of their kind of underwhelming performances, or Patrick Mahomes' underwhelming performances, he's thrown a couple interceptions that make you scratch your head, a couple really bad throws. They're 2-0. They're 2-0, and they've beat two contenders in the AFC, two tiebreakers they already hold 2 weeks in. So I think they're going to win their division really easily, maybe split with the Chargers, but I think this is a 13-win team at least. 13-4, they have a chance to win like 14 games. Because if you can't beat this team when Patrick is throwing two interceptions, he's not even throwing 200 yards, and Travis Kelce is not involved in this offense, I don't know when you beat this team. I don't. Because things are breaking well, as they did early last year for a team to blow the doors off of Kansas City, and nobody can do it. They either scrape by with a win and lose in the playoffs to this team, or as we saw in these past 2 weeks, they can't even beat them when they're not firing on all cylinders because Xavier Worthy's going to get better. Travis Kelce will get more involved. Rashee Rice will continue to do what he does. Hollywood Brown is not a factor, but Patrick Mahomes will not be throwing the ball to the other team twice a game like he did on Sunday. So Andy Reid is going to continue to put his guys in the best position to win games. They're probably going to be the 1 seed, and the playoffs will probably go through Arrowhead again. So until someone proves that they can beat this team when they're down, when they're supposed to beat this team, I have little reason to move them off this top spot. But yeah, I like the way the tiers came out. I think it's pretty comprehensive. I think there's a lot of nuance here that um, shows that it's not just one size fits all. There's 32 different teams and quite a bit of their own like circumstances that apply only to them. But trying to group these teams together, it's fun, and I think it gets the message across that everyone's still chasing Kansas City one way or another.